Welcome. Good morning. Approaching a new Parsha when it speaks about the sin of the golden calf and how could you understand such a thing 40 days after the Jewish people beheld this spectacular revelation at Mount Sinai. How could they possibly worship an inanimate object? Though the inanimate object, this golden calf, actually was not inanimate. It was animated. It moved through witchcraft, like a calf that would be munching on some grass. So it actually says that this is an example of Neira Alila al Bnei Adam. It says in Tehillim, in Psalms, that God brings calamity upon people. At times, a person's evil inclination overwhelms them and causes them to sin, as der farvas milmaila hesitai alav hayetzahara, because above the person was seduced in order to bring to this particular sin. Because really, any Jew is incapable of sin. By their nature, if they would be expressing their true nature, it would be impossible for any Jew to sin. As it says in the Zayar, nefesh ki sachta tevaha. It's like a question, as there could be a person that could possibly do a sin. So one of the explanations in Chassidus, and it gives the source of Toras Chaim and Likutei Sichos also, where it discusses this. Interestingly, in one of the Basilagani Maimarim, in the early years, the Rebbe spoke about this, or maybe it wasn't that early, but for sure in one of the it was probably Tafshin Yud Dalet or something like that. The Rebbe spoke about this concept, and someone pointed out to me that in the edited version of that sikh, I think it was the last Maimer, that was I think the last Basilagani that was edited by the Rebbe out of his 40 years of delivering discourses on that topic. I returned to my garden, Basilagani. But there it does bring this, and the Rebbe nixed it. And someone pointed out to me that it's not really appropriate to translate that part. But here it is in the edited sichos of Tafshin Nun Beis, in the final sicha that we have of the Rebbe in the typical format, in the written, edited, and approved format. So it's the example is the first man that why couldn't he trust the kashrus of his wife? His wife was left alone for a moment, it seems, from the story, and she gives him a fig or something, or a glass of wine, grapes. Different opinions of what it was. It wasn't an apple. That was not one possibility of what the sages interpret the five things. But this was something that his wife gave him. Couldn't he trust her kashrus? She was giving a hechsher to it. She was saying, this is kosher food. Eat it with me, dear husband. And he did. So what did he do wrong? So sometimes you have Neira Alila of Bnei Adam. Sometimes God wants to elicit a narrative that couldn't possibly be. As the Zayar says, it's impossible for a Jew to sin. Okay, so that fits in nicely with what the Rebbe says here in exactly avert words. There's no other way you can interpret it. It says, after all the work that we've done, and we've had the previous generation, that the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe's father-in-law, said, we've finished all of our means of service. The only thing left to do is stand ready to greet Mashiach. The Rebbe says, Hatman Shayin far endigt, we have already ended and completed the final rectifications have also been completed. There is no other way to interpret those words. I learned Yiddish just so I could see this for myself. We've finished the Avodas Abirim that has been occupying the Jewish people for almost 6,000 years. And now we're on to something new. But no one dares say it except the Rebbe, and not even the Rebbe's disciples and followers. But it's written here clearly. How does anyone interpret that? I would not listen to anything Lubavitcher has to say about the Rebbe until he can come to grips with those words and understand what that means. But the Rebbe himself explains what that means. Is itzder de hadgasha be'ikar, the main emphasis now, al chol reish, and first and foremost, ayfter sim v'shleimus v'gvar ha'aveda, regarding the completion of our service to bring in the gimel from geula hamitis v'shleima b'pel mamish. You have to bring on the last stage. The last stage of existence. Here it's in the context of you have an aleph, you have an ABC history of humanity. It just each letter. The aleph being the first letter is expressed in this week's Parsha. Ki Tisa reish b'nei Yisrael, when you lift up or count each head of the Jewish people. So that is the purpose that the world was created with. It was Aleph. The first and foremost is Yisrael v'Teira. Bishvilam nivra ha'elam. The Jewish people and the Torah, the world was created for it. God created a world where he can give a law called Torah for the Jewish people to fulfill and bring completion to the world. So you go through 3 phases. You have a mission, that's the first phase. The counting of the Jew is the recognition of the purpose. Have you lived up to your purpose? Or what? Here is your purpose. Then you have the second stage. You have a descent. You're not perfect in that, you're human. So there's a descent in this week's Parsha that's represented by the sin of the golden calf. And then it ends with the story of the final set of tablets, which were actually cubes, which caused his face to shine. And they were fearful to approach him. So what is the significance of that? And what is the rectification of that problem? He puts on a mask. Moshe Rabbeinu puts on a mask so you could withstand his beyondness. He puts on a mask so you could contain some of his direct experience and allow you to exist. When you saw him, Vayiru like Mageshes alav, they were afraid to approach him. How could you learn from someone that you're afraid to approach? So actually, it's when they learned from him, he pulled off his mask. But to take that learning and apply it to their lives, that represents wearing a mask. So you can, I'll just read this part inside to you. It says like this. I'm going to back up a bit. It says, you had 2 sets of tablets. The first ones were made by God and written by God. The second ones were made by Moshe and written by God. And they came with a bonus. You know, sometimes you get the vodkas that come with a little in the seasonal time, the winter season. You get those in liquor stores here. You get like a little bottle attached to the big bottle. So here you had something that's actually not little at all. Something that's very relevant to everybody is the mythology and the homily and all the teachings of the Torah that came with the giving of the written word. You had a written word that is immutable and unchanging. And then you have this interpretation that flows, and through time it flows, and each generation is obligated to approach it in the most authentic way for their time. So the final set of tablets came with it, midrashim, agadita, mythology, teachings in the Torah. Here, Al titzar b'luchos harishonos. Don't be put off or regretful of the shattering of the first set of tablets. Shelo hayu ela aseres hadibros levad. They were just the 10 Commandments. V'luchos hashnim ani naiten lecha sheyeh behem halachas medrash v'agados. And the second set of tablets, I'm giving within this medrash, agadata, kiflayim l'tashia, doubled strength. Were it not for the fact that the Jewish people sinned and Moshe ended up shattering the first set of luchos, tablets, we would only have had the 5 books of Moses and the book of Joshua alone. Shenemar ki b'reiv chochma reiv kaas. Lefi shebeit batoi v'chatei neisef lehem reiv chochma latrichem yeser. Because they were rebellious and sinned, they required more wisdom to engage in than otherwise. They needed more fixing. So you have 3 stages. Suggested in this week's Parsha, you have the mission, you have the descent, the fall, welcome. You have the shattering of the tablets that resulted in it, and then repentance that comes with it, and that results in the final set of tablets, which we got on Yom Kippur. Now we're facing not Yom Kippur, but Yom Kippurim. We're having Purim is the day where you achieve what you do on Yom Kippur without the fasting, and you'd rather you make a big party. So we're going to have to learn about Purim maybe tomorrow for Purim Cotton the night following. Now, there's just one more way I want to approach this. Remember we discussed, we don't say a trinity, we say a trilogy. We have a Tanakh, we have 3 parts in our Torah. It's Arasan Tlisoi. It's a 3-fold Torah. The 3-fold cord is not easily severed. And there's also a way of looking at any story with a beginning, middle, and end. You have a mission, you have the plot that ensues and your ability to fulfill the mission, and then you have that they lived happily ever after, which in our sense is Geula. We'll see here. So the first thing is Torah. That's the foundation and the beginning of all matters, as our sages say. Torah nikras Reishis Darchai. It's the beginning of his way. So the Torah is called the first. The world started with Torah. Val Zias Kadma La'ilm. In fact, it preceded Torah, and is in dem besteht the Tachlis v'Kavana fun al inyanim, and in it is the epitome of all the purpose of everything. Breishis b'shvil Torah shenikra Reishis. One of the purposes of creations was the Torah. The second one is the Jewish people. Okay, so first you have Torah, represented by the letter Aleph, 1. Brias ha'olam, then you have creation. So you had something that precedes creation, you have the Torah. That's the purpose. Then you have the actual creation, which is an olam and a world, which means to conceal. You have this veil of the truth, the opportunity for failure, for shattering. And the Aveda in the Bria, b'kdei eisfirin irtachlis b'shvil Torah. So now you have the platform to engage in your purpose. You've had a purpose, the Torah, now you have a world to do it in, and then you they lived happily ever after. The Gimel, the Gemar, the finale, the Shleimas HaKol, the perfection of everything, the Geula Mitzvah Shleima, V'Nesfirat Zechais, Tachlis V'Shleimas Brias Ha'olam. Then we've accomplished the ultimate purpose and perfection of the creation of the world, for which purpose it was created from the beginning. So the Aleph Beis Gimel, the ABCs are Anechi. The Torah begins with Anechi. Begins with Breishis, but the giving of the 10 Commandments starts with Anechi. The first time we hear from the Jewish people, from God, the Jewish people hear from God directly. He introduces himself, Anechi, I. So that's the Aleph. It starts with the letter Aleph, Anechi. Then you have Beis is gracious. In the beginning, what God created. And then you have Gimel is Geula, redemption. So redemption is the reward for it all. So the middle stage is the Neira Alila of Bnei Adam. It's the impossibility for sin, as Isaiah says. How is it possible that a Jew could possibly sin? It's against his nature. So God creates subterfuge, plot, seduction, temptation in order for us to reach something higher, to reach in deeper. So interestingly, when it was specifically when Moshe receives the second tablets that his face shone. So why is that? So I want to read a bit more inside. It's going to speak about what a mask is. You wear a mask every time you go to buy more shaving cream for whatever you're allowed to shave. And you have to put on a mask. I had to show some kind of code. I didn't have it, so they let me buy because I was accompanied by my child, who I guess gave me more humanity, that I was allowed to go in with him, even though, what a crazy world. So we have to wear a mask all the time. Moshe wore a mask. Why did he wear a mask? What is the purpose of a mask? We're going to be wearing masks on Purim, probably. What is the purpose of that? I want to read it inside. And I want you to have in mind where this is all going, which is the spectacular reveal. We finished Avodas HaBirurim. We've done the last Birurim. What in the world does that mean? When I used to go to McDonald's, before I was at all religious, I used to order filet of fish because we didn't eat meat. We didn't do it. So filet of fish was our kosher food in those days. Does that mean that Avodas HaBirurim, there was no temptation to have a Big Mac? Okay, this was said a little bit after that, maybe. This was said in 1992. The last words we have on the Rebbe in an edited, written, approved format. We've already done the Avodas HaBirurim. Okay, so I wanted you to keep that in mind also, that this is going to somehow explain this. Why did you have a Gimel Tammuz? Why do you have the ultimate mask? Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, wears a mask so you can't, you can appreciate your own independence, that you have a life, that you're not always going to be sitting by a mountain enjoying someone who had to separate in order to just be alone with God. So that's someone that's hard to relate to. And they were fearful to approach him. And his face shone. So that allows you, when he wears a mask, that allows you to not be fearful, to allow yourself to be yourself, and to recognize that the ani, the I that you say, welcome. When you say I, that is connected with the Aleph that the Ten Commandments starts with, Anechi. That your ani is really ayin. It's the denial of independent selfhood and the recognition of a connection with the anechi, the yesh hamiti, the true existence. So every Jew has the power to have this karnei haid, these rays that Michelangelo likened to these horns like a devil. They were actually going the opposite direction, so he got it wrong. The point is of a rays is that you starts at the flashlight and it expands, like the menorah expands, like the, not the nanu, okay, that too. You have the Kohanim do that, the hippies do this, lahavdil. But it's a victory. A person, when they win a war, they do this. You have to think about God when you lift your arms in victory, or in any time you lift up your arms, you have to think about Hashem, because it's the angels lifting up their wings. It's an ascension. It's expression of love and fear, which brings us to rise higher, to tap into a higher frequency. So these rays shine outwards and expand, like the windows in the Holy Temple started narrow and they expanded to show that they're meant to shine light outwards. Michelangelo flipped it on his head, just like King Tut did with the pyramids being that way. It's supposed to be the symbol of a menorah going outward and spreading out, not just putting one person on top. It's bearing everyone on your shoulders, being the foundation, and bearing everyone and lighting up everyone as candles that come as an extension from the center core of the candelabra. They all extend, all the branches extend from one singular core and come from one slab of gold. We'll see what's on the slab. Okay, so I was just determining where I'm going to start reading. Okay. Accordingly, we can understand that the innovation of the fact that Moshe's face shone with these rays of light, that is associated specifically with the last set of tablets, not the first ones. Remember, there was this shattering in between. You have the written word, nothing else with the first luchos. It was going to be redemption there, but we didn't do anything. We didn't contribute. We just were rescued and given a gift, like a kala. When God finished speaking, the word there, as Rashi points out, is kala, which is a bride. We were given a gift. Moshe was given a gift like a bride's given gifts. 24 gifts, 24 books of the Torah. Okay, that's actually an interesting kasha. Here we say we would have gotten the 5 books of Moses and Joshua, not the 24 books. So in what sense was it giving? That must be talking about the second set of tablets. But we have to look into that a little more. I do have the Rashis and a few other things. I have a beautiful Malbim, I don't think I'll have time for today, maybe tomorrow, about how the luchos were formed. It's incredible. It's hard to understand also in light of other interpretations like Rashi that says that he found a sapphire quarry and got the remains. So that must have been talking about the second set, which he carved. The first set is what Malbim's speaking about. They materialize out of the atmosphere in a most spectacular way, and he goes through the whole natural progression and just speeds it up, and that's the miracle that happened. So I'd like to do that maybe tomorrow or something. Please God. So when Moshe's face shines and they were fearful to approach him, that was in the giving of the second set of tablets. Das ist der Ilui von Gimel, which is the Gimel, the 3 stages, the first set of tablets, the sin, and then the second set of tablets is the Gimel, which corresponds to Geula, redemption. Was kommt dafka durch der Aveda von Beis, der Chet ha'egel v'shveres haluchos. So this only comes as a result of a descent, the level base, Parshas, God basically creates the whole world with the letter base, Parshas, which is the Helam, the concealment, which leads to the Chet ha'egel, the sin, especially the ultimate sin of the golden calf, and then the breaking of the luchos. We were shattered. We had to put ourselves back together. So then that is the Aveda, the service, the effort that brings about the final stage. Dafka de luchos achreini, specifically the latter set of tablets, was seinen gekommen durch der Yerida Lamata, that came about through the descent, to Eiftein Avedas Berurim. We descended in order to refine, to come out of it, to rectify. So the Chet Egel was a licentious experience. It was driven by very crude motivations, but it has a very spiritual interpretation that corresponds to it. But here it's meant to represent the shattering, the fall, the descent. And that's related to Avodas Berurim. When there is a draw from the world, when there's still a possibility to succumb to temptation and to fall, that is Avodas Berurim. If we've passed that, like the Rebbe says explicitly here in the final edited Sikha, There's one more after that. It's just a different format. And Rabbi Mann was, he wrote it up for the Rebbe. He was young at the time, but he was a genius, and he is a genius. And he wrote it up for the Rebbe. The Rebbe made tikkunim, he made corrections, and the Rebbe Mann darshans each one. It's beautiful how that all came about, but it's a different format. So to me, it's this is really the last sicha. And it makes sense because thematically, it is the ultimate. So he's describing what Birurim is. It's temptation. It's the ability to be succumb to mortal, fallible decisions. The bechira chafshis, the freedom to choose, means the freedom to fail. So that failure allows us to do avodas birurim, interact with the world, and to try and come out on top. If we finally succeed, which the Rebbe says here that we have, then you reach the final stage, which is geula. So that's associated with the final luchais, the ability to shine, with the karnei haid, these rays that shine out, that inspire. So why does he wear a mask? We'll get to that. Hatzech eif getan durch de luchas achreinis. Tein eif dem gilui von talumas chochma kiflaim l'tashia. So the latter set of tablets, the second set, is expressive of the idea of depth of wisdom and doubled strength. So you get not only the written word, you get all this interpretation that is destined to be articulated by future generations of sages that would see hints in the Torah and know. They would actually have prophecy, as the Rebbe explains, of the truth, and then find Torah sources that back it up. So really it starts with the person. The final set of luchos allows the person to acknowledge the ability to be rectified, to be authentic, and to see a genuine innovation in the Torah, which is expressing what Moshe was given in the final days leading up to Yom Kippur, when we got the second set of tablets, all the interpretation, the medrash, the Agadata, that was this incredible gift that doubled strength, the ability for the person to contribute a real role as a partner in creation by setting the rules for the creation itself by authentic interpretation. So that is the second set of tablets, the ability to interpret, the ability to see authentic depth in Torah that was given in so many words, and no more, no less. And then you have infinite ability to expound on that. Welcome, Arlene. I'm just reading what you wrote, Lucille. Shalom, dear friends. It's so hard not to understand your language. One day you'll just press a button and it will go. Maybe someone could find out what language you speak and see if there's a translator amongst the listeners. I once paid a translator. I used to write a lot and I used to translate into modern Hebrew, and that was really fun. I'd love to do that again. It takes a lot of time. It's much easier for me to just prepare and sit in my car and go walk to shul. So the reason why his face shone after he received the second tablets and all that he learnt there, the way he learnt is fascinating, because originally he couldn't contain it all. He was having forgetfulness. And then I want to do that Malbim with you. It's amazing. So when he acquired more wisdom, that's what caused his face to shine. As it says, Chochmas Adam Tayr Panav. The wisdom of a person illuminates their face. That's a verse from Koheles, Ecclesiastes. Was das is an erg atzmi shalamayla mislabshus. This is an essential light that transcends anything to do. It's the X-rays that goes through the world. It affects everything like oil permeates all things. You can't contain it. It's everywhere. God's infinite light is everywhere, and it exists within all things. So therefore, it's not limited to 613 words. It's the depth that derives from there. The world is preceded by the Torah and created through the Torah, and everything is in it, including human wisdom. We're meant to use our minds to interpret.
Will idach, yes, as the Meile von der Luchas Achreines kommt dafke durch der Yerida Vislabshus Lamata Beilam, since the advantage that comes about through the second set of tablets is a consequence of our having first descended into the world, der base von Bereshis, the second letter, which represents the whole volatility of the world, the veil, the concealment of the world. In some ways it's like a mask. Psal Locha, formed for you, he had to carve these sapphire gems out himself. Von Avanim Ba'ilam, from stones in the physical world, nit videluchas arishenes, was sein in Maise Elokim. Okay, the Malbim tells us how they were Maise Elokim. The first set of tablets were the creation of God. It was formed from the atmosphere in a miraculous way, and an ongoing miracle that the letters read forwards and backwards, and they floated when the insides of the letters, like the mem and the samach, floated miraculously, not through electromagnetic fields. Or maybe, to me it makes no difference. The fact is they floated, but it's called a miracle. Bis zum hafek sein euch den Janim bilte rezuyim. So when a mortal, Moshe Rabbeinu, a person, is carving stones from physical stones, that represents the ability to transform the finite creation. Things that are possibly to be undesirable. The undesirables of the world can be transformed through this power. The Ribber hat der Karen Erpanov, thus his face shone, because it represents the ability to transform inyanim built to ritzuyim, things that are undesirable. Before we said it was tied into the wisdom that shone through his face. So we're saying that the ability for him to achieve that wisdom and that being able to shine, the ability to receive the second set of tablets came through going into the world and transforming the world. The Ribber hat der Karen Erpanov. So once you do that, that's what causes the face to shine. So you are. It seems like the wisdom almost comes about through the descent. Through the descent, you have the possibility to acquire a deeper form of wisdom that results, since it comes from the lowest thing. You fell very low, therefore it's expressed even in the lowest thing, which is the skin, the most external part of a person. It shone, Karan air, the face, no, the skin of his face shone. And that gepeilt v'yiru megeshes alav, that caused him to be fearful to approach him. Und derfar v'yiten al panav masve, for which purpose he wore a mask. Bikdei master sein gilu yalkus shebetera von the slabshus binyan habirurim, in order to conceal the godliness and the Torah of having perfected and rectified everything in the world. It seems to suggest to me that there were those who weren't, fearful to approach him because he had already been in the world and he elevated the world. And that is frightening to people. Look how terrified people are of this idea, that nobody touches this. I haven't seen anybody touch this. Not a single rabbi. I've never heard anyone talk about the fact that the Rebbe says absolutely clearly and unequivocally that we finished the last Berurim. So out of the last Berurim, it's supposed to make your face shine. Your face is supposed to shine with wisdom because you've been in the lowest realm, you've come out. Why does he wear a mask? Because not everyone can handle that fact. He has to subdue that. Let's see more. Der Hester Masve, the concealment of a mask, is aber nit benegeh to it in mitzaratzmam. Not to say that a Jew can be concealed in his core, in his identity. Varum panim bepanim diber Hashem imachem, because we had the eternal experience of having on Mount Sinai God speaking to us face to face. Bli Hester klal, with nothing interfering, no veil, no filter. Und der River b'shas Moshe diber el bnei Yisrael es asher yitzave. So therefore, at the time when Moshe spoke to the Jewish people what he was commanded, hater arab genumen de masve, he would lift the veil. V'ra'u bnei Yisrael as pnei Moshe, and they would see his face, kikar na'er pnei Moshe, that his face shone. Aner b'shas Moshe an idin haben a shaychus mit inyane olam. It's only when Moshe and the Jewish people involved themselves in worldly things that they had to do, in order to refine things in a way that is by engaging with those things. That's called birur, avodas birurim, b'derech hislabshus, by engaging with the thing. Here it means to be enclothed within the thing. Your mind isn't clothed with numbers when you're thinking accounting. You can't help that. So you cannot be thinking about dveikus at the time. Einod Mavade, the Chassid wrote at the end of the accounting sheet. Okay, that was when he, after he did his work, he articulated what was always present, but sometimes you have to hide it with a mask. Demot v'heishiv Moshe a masve. So when they were involved with more mundane activities, here they were learning, they wanted to hear what God commanded, they were getting the new instructions from the king, so they could behold his face, they weren't fearful. But if you're in the middle of a brain surgery and you get zapped with a thunderbolt that you could see and lightning that you could hear, that's pretty inappropriate, and you don't want that happening. So you wear a veil, you wear a mask in surgery. You have to focus on things that are also important. What happens though when that historic, millennia, ongoing mission is completed? What do you do then? There's not a reason for a mask. Bigday, as the Welt zal kennen aufnehmen den Gilui und nicht nispatel werden b'mitziusai. If Moshe didn't wear a mask and they were constantly inspired when they were husbanding their chickens or whatever people do in those days, they wouldn't be able to do their duty and they wouldn't be able to exist. They wouldn't be able to be independent. The Rebbe put on the ultimate mask. Where do you see the Rebbe's face now? The Rebbe was saying these words from his face. You could see his face and you could see words being uttered. People were there. People were incredibly inspired. They were really willing to give their entire life devoted to that. The Rebbe wanted a time where people assert themselves as, this is important to me. On my own, I'm going to shine on my own. I'm going to lift my veil and inspire others on my own. Das heißt, as euch de Masve is kavanasa. This means to say that even the mask, when you wear it for the right purpose, here the purpose is to go about your business in refining the world. What happens when that refining's over? Let's see if there's a hint. Das heißt, so also the mask, its intent is, nit helm is not to conceal. Nor b'kedei as the gilui zal kennen skabel vern in elam, but so that the world can actually absorb this revelation. So if the world cannot absorb as the world the revelation of a tzaddik like the Rebbe, who's never seen a tzaddik like that, who only does things for other people and only gives wisdom nonstop with no notes for hours on end and never went to the washroom in the middle for hours and hours, and everybody else did. And this is an older man. No one can really shine in front of that. It's like I'm like put off when I see these amateur guitar players that are unbelievable studio musicians. And I forget the guitar. I don't know, I could do haiku. I could do a better haiku than that guy. So how do you perform in front of a Rebbe? You don't exist in front of the Rebbe. The Rebbe puts on a mask, and here are the ultimate mask. On Chaf Zayin Adar, 2 years apart, same day on the calendar, one in Adar base, Tafshin base, and one 2 years later, Tafshin Daled. There was only one Adar that year. Same date, a stroke and a veil that's intended not to conceal, but to allow the world to shine on its own. Und durch der Avodah von Nidden in Bira v'zicha ha'elam tut ha'raif. And through the service of a Jew, by engaging the world and refining and rectifying it, as eich v'ayed gefindt sich in Welt, that just even as a Jew, as he's watching a Super Bowl, doing very mundane things like eating popcorn or beer, Zal erkennen aufnehmen de Gili von Karan Erpanav. He can use that as an opportunity to bond with his children and shine, just like Moshe shone when he lifted his veil and taught Torah and taught what God wanted from them as a nation. So you're supposed to allow the world to exist and allow it to reveal and absorb the purpose of that world. So the descent is for the purpose of acquiring wisdom to shine forth in the world. Sometimes you wear a mask to allow the world to exist, and sometimes, and I'm suggesting much more now than ever before in history, because we finished the mission of Birurim. The purpose of the mask is completed already. The purpose of the mask, remember, is to allow there to be a world, to allow there to be independence. Now we're supposed to say, I'm not afraid that I have a powerful weapon in my hand that could be used for good or bad. I could give a share right now with this phone, or I could destroy the world by destroying relationships that are important. We have that opportunity. That's so much power in our hands. We're supposed to take faith and confidence that the true choice of every person is to do what he would have somebody else do, to be authentic and real and honor relationships. V's vet sein beschleimes begula mitzvah shleimo gimel. So the mask is not intended to conceal. It's intended to bring holiness to other forums and dimensions, to bring redemption there too. When there's going to be a time, the Gimel is the Geula, when your teacher will no longer conceal himself. And you're going to see your teacher or your master. As Jews exist also as they are involved with worldly things. God will be present there too. That's the whole point of Vedas Habirim being over, that when you're there, you could shine and illuminate divine light also there. Also at the hockey game when you're watching your kid play hockey. Bis azal derek ze zal euch sein in dem Welt allein, ben nigluk veda vayru kobasar yaktav. To the extent that even the flesh of all people will see together the glory of Hashem, Evan Makir Tizak, so that even a regular stone, not just the sapphire gems of the latter set of tablets, the second set of tablets, but even a stone in the wall will cry out, Der Gili fun Kayak Kapel Benifal, that it has a divine creation, a source of creation. That's the identity of an Ani as a Nechi. Okay, I'm going to say it, I'm going to have to do one more part here, and then we'll probably call it a day. But, it starts from the first thing we say in the morning, Maide ani lifanacha. Who's Maide? Was, warum der Ani von Eden, your identity, your I, your self-concept, your consciousness, euch wie steht lamata, even as you exist in your waking mind, which is probably not too elevated, or maybe you're still left in a dream state. But it's supposed to be the most sort of like basic recognition of now you're back in the physical world. Is ein Zach mit der Ani unanechi shalamayla. That Ani, that expression of I, is synonymous with the I that the Creator says, and he starts the Ten Commandments with the word anechi, as is expressed by the Zohar when it says Yisrael v'kut shabrichu kul echad. The Jewish people and God are entirely one. Knumas in Tzuras Eis Aleph. As the Aleph suggests, it's a two yuds, the smallest letter, and connected by a vav in the middle. Kedua as pshitas von Eden is ein Zach mit pshitas ha'atzmus, as the Baal Shem Tov teaches that the most basic substance of a Jew is synonymous with the most abstract and all-inclusive infinity of God's essence, called Pshitus Ha'atzmus, a simple expression of essential divinity everywhere, everything. Have a great day.